All right. We'll start our January episode of Tamil Innovators by tamilculture.com. I'm your host, Arnie Roskumar. I would like to please ask everyone to hold your questions until the end of our interview, at which point I promise I'll open up the floor for any questions. I'd like to introduce our guest now, who is the Deputy Chairman and co-founder of 369 Global, Mr. Kumaran Nadesan. Hi, Kumaran.
Hi, Arnie. I haven't been called Mr. in a while, so thank you for that.
I had to do it in the beginning, and then I'll just refer to you as Kumaran from now on.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know if our viewers know, but I do, that you are in sunny Chennai right now, and we're in the middle of the remnants of a snowstorm in Ontario. So can you please introduce yourself to us and then let us know how you ran away to the sunny Chennai?
Thank you, Arnie. So as you said, I'm the Deputy Chairman and co-founder of 369 Global. I'm not sure what else to share about myself. I'm a husband, I'm a brother, most importantly, a father of two young kids, age 4 and 1, who are here with me in Chennai. So it was not just me moving, but it's my entire family, my partner, kids, my in-laws, and so on. So it's a whole show out here for sure. What brings me to Chennai is part of my mandate at 369 Global. We are a rapidly expanding conglomerate based in Canada, headquartered in Ajax. We have business interests in education and training, financial services, creative industries, and social impact. We run everything from private career colleges in Ontario to brand agencies to doing angel investments, especially in the tech space. We do a lot of ESG and CSR work in Canada and abroad in places like Sri Lanka. And the reason why I'm out here in Chennai is because we're very keen on looking at what the next global repercussions are going to be as a recession comes to us, and what opportunities there are for companies like us that are looking towards immigration as a source of new business opportunities. So India is going to be is probably going to overtake China in terms of its economic growth in the next 10 years. Even though China's growth is going, it's going to plateau. India still has about 25 years of growth ahead. And we really want to explore opportunities that might be there for 365 Global in India. And no better way to do it than to actually put your money where your mouth is and sit in the market and see what's going on. So that's what brings me to Chennai in a nutshell.
Amazing. Well, you have a great supportive family. Everyone got up and left with you, and
well, they're ready to come back tomorrow, but that's another story.
The snow's not doing
we're all sick. All of us are sick. So it's and the mosquito bites. I think it's my kids were born in Canada, so the mosquito bites are not helping my poor kids. They're like, it's almost like chicken pox, the bites, because they have an allergic reaction to it, so it just becomes boiled. So it's a whole thing. That's going on here that I'll spare you the details.
I'm sure that's not fun. I remember not liking it when I was a child as well. But hey, it's snowing here, so you're doing one better.
Oh, hands down. I'll pick this over that any day.
Of course. Well, thanks for talking about what your mandate is at 369 Global, why you're at Chennai. And you kind of spoke towards this, but the last few years for the economic world has been kind of tumultuous, right? We had the pandemic, we have the recession, if I'm allowed to say it's a recession, no one likes to say it. And now we're kind of recovering, but inflation is really high. What do you see are opportunities, and what do you keep yourself motivated on to push through these tough times?
I don't want to sound like a callous business person, because I still have hang-ups about calling myself a business person, because I was in the public service for the longest time in my life until I joined up with my business partner Murali just a couple of years ago. But they always say when there's blood on the streets is the best time. And even though there is a quote unquote recession, I mean, there is a recession, let's just face it. I'll say it.
Thank you.
But I think the recession, there are sectors that are always recession proof, and there are sectors that always thrive when there's a recession, right? So
Mhm.
especially in some of the businesses that we run at 369 Global, especially on the education and training side,
Yeah.
if you take the pandemic, for example, we actually experienced double-digit growth in that part of the business when there was the pandemic, right?
Mhm.
Part of that had to do with the fact that we went to virtual learning delivery at our colleges, but also because during recession, as you can understand, people hunker down and they want to use that opportunity to upgrade themselves. There are usually government subsidies that are provided that people typically channel towards learning amongst other things. So I think it is when you talk about motivation, I think it is really as a business leader, I think you just have to stay resilient and know that there are very difficult decisions to be made in times of recession, whether that is cutting costs or making hard pivots. But I think it would be a missed opportunity if you don't actually realize the potential things that are possible even during times of recession. So at our end, a lot of our businesses are especially focused on a key demographic, which is immigration in Canada, and we know, given the fact that the immigration levels that have been set by the federal government, and that will continue to be set by federal governments, no matter who's in power, is going to only help us and not hurt us.
Right.
As the world changes and there are new consolidation of power, I think Canada's brand is still strong enough to attract good people to these shores, and so we want to be at the forefront of that in terms of helping welcome those newcomers, educating them, upskilling them, and matching them to labor market shortages that we experience here in Canada. So for us, recession, no recession, pandemic, no pandemic, the business goes on and the business continues to grow. And in that we're very confident,
Yeah.
and partly because we have very strong people, very good people, people who've gone through multiple recessions, multiple immigrations and displacements themselves. Like 90% of our workforce is racialized from different parts of the world. So for us as immigrants and as immigrant owners and people who employ a lot of immigrants,
Mhm.
we've seen much worse, I think, than a
Right.
recession. So
Yeah.
we'll be here and we'll continue to grow strength to strength.
Awesome. Resilience is something I think I'll come back to, but it's funny you said business tends to go on or business has to go on. Spoken like a true businessman. But like you said, before you were in the private sector, you actually were in the public sector. So I think everyone would be kind of curious to see what kind of motivated you to lead or leave the public sector, move to the private sector, and how that actually came to play.
I have a terrible sense of humor, so I'll spare you my jokes.
No,
I was
go
going to say it's
ahead.
all about the money. No, it's not about the money. No, I think when I finished university 2 centuries ago, I joined the public service, and I did different things in the public service, from strategy to program management to intergovernmental policy to senior executive support. Um, and there comes a point where at the end of many, like almost 15 years of policy making and taking a look at the world and taking a certainly look at Ontario, because I was in the Ontario Public Service, in terms of how I can help residents of Ontario or businesses of Ontario. I always found my meetings with stakeholders to be very exciting because they were the direct recipients, or they were the ones who then translated your policy objectives and your program design into actual impacts downstream. Um, so for me, I found those meetings very, eye-opening, because as a good policy advisor, you always need to understand what are the problems that the market is facing, and then try and resolve and create policy that hopefully helps and doesn't hinder. So there's always been this thing at the back of my mind where I didn't know if I was going to be in the public service, at least at one stretch, for a very long time, because that was always a part of my makeup. Because I always felt that you need to move across different sectors to gain a much more holistic frame of what needs to happen. And that's great timing, because I have my great friend Roshani Vignaraja from the OPS joining. So I'll say good things about the OPS now. But what I was saying is, having been at the table with stakeholders talking about, what's keeping them up at night and understanding how your policy design or program management can help them, I'm always curious to be on that side of the table. And then so when the opportunity came up with my business partner, where I was able to kind of, start wading into the private sector, I really understood that policy cannot obviously happen in a vacuum. And in fact, it is not policy informs the market. The market informs policy that then creates the environment for the market to do even better. So that was my opportunity. I thought that was my break. It was also, that was the sort of the micro aspect of it, or the personal. The public or the macro aspect of it is obviously the pandemic. It was, the era of the great mass migration or mass retirement or whatever you want to call it. And I thought if this wasn't the window that I would take to go out and get some experience in the private sector, then I would never leave. Then I should just stay in the public service, and I would be, in the public service for 25, 30 years. The what do you call the pathway is pretty set. Like, you become a manager, you become a director, you become an assistant deputy minister, then you become a deputy minister, and that was it. Roshan is giving all kinds of emoticons. So I don't know what's going on there. She gets it. So and for some people that's good. They want that structure. They understand that flow. My life has never been structured. I've been a refugee, immigrant, whatever, like 4 or 5 times in my life. It's never been a straight line, personal, professional, whatever it may be. And
Right.
so I thought I can always come back to the public service, but I may not always get the opportunity to get this market experience. And so when that time came, the pandemic came, it was just a confluence of different motivations, Arani, and I saw that as a window to try out something new. And I'll just end with this. I tend to ramble, Arani, so you'll have to just try and cut me off.
No, very good.
I'll say this and end it. I even say this now to my business partner, Murali Srinaran. I always tell him, I am so mad at him that he didn't tell me sooner that we
Right.
could be doing this, because it's been a phenomenal experience. And
Yes.
even in my current role at 369 Global, guess what? I'm at this moment in Chennai working on 3 provincial grants, 1 federal grant, talking to minister's office, organizing a reception at Queen's Park. It's like I never left in government. But
No.
from this side of the table, the dynamics are entirely different and completely within your control. And what is life if you don't have the autonomy to do what you want to do? So I am so
Awesome.
glad I'm here. I just wish I did it sooner. I may come back to the public service like
Yeah.
10, 15 years, but it'll be on my own terms, which is the best way to live your life.
Got it. I love that. I respect that for sure. So you said you were a refugee at a point. So you were born in Sri Lanka, I believe. You had grown up in Oman. You have roots in Chennai. You obviously were Canadian or are Canadian. How do you think all of that, and you did speak to this, but how do you think all of that kind of moving around, getting used to different situations, different geographies, how did that shape who you are today and how it led you to where you are?
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about this, where we are right now, but it's the whole notion of third culture kids.
Mhm.
Third culture kids who've lived in different places, have had different periods of immersion in different cultures, and so they're able to gain an awareness of the world and have a different range of skills and understanding and perspectives that really help them position as leaders in different spaces that they're in. And I think it's absolutely true. I was born in Jaffna, Sri Lanka, Tamil, left when I was about 5 to Chennai, India, where I started my formal schooling from like grades 1 to 5. So that was as a refugee, where I went to India, and in India, then I went to Oman, the Middle East, as a political refugee, actually, because of other reasons that were happening in Chennai with some larger political things going on.
Right.
And then we came to Canada 25 years ago, and then I actually moved to Australia as well for about 6 months to do law school. That's another story for another day. What I think happened with all of this is you get this sense of that you belong everywhere,
Right.
and at the same time, you don't belong anywhere. I truly feel that, at the end of this, I'm 41 now, that Canada is probably the closest thing I would call as home now. But even that comes with a lot of like hang-ups and what have you. What happens as a result of this is, when I say you belong everywhere, you belong nowhere, is you really find a way to connect with everyone on some point. The way I don't know if it's a negative or a positive way. It's not you're not like a chameleon, because I think your values are consistent, but
Mhm.
you really get to understand and appreciate at least one insight in somebody's lived experience. When you moved around so much and you've met all kinds of different people, you can relate on one thing. The flip
Right.
side of that is you've missed like big parts of a decade worth in that particular country. So
Right.
if people give me pop culture references of Canada from like the 80s to the late 90s, I have no freaking clue. If but if you tell me, 80s, like mid 80s to like early 90s India, like Tamil Nadu culture, like I'm on it, right? So
Yeah.
so that is the other side of it, but that's okay. You then relate to other things that Canada has to offer from the 2000s on, like, when you were there, right? So
Mhm.
anyways, I'm also very sick, just as a disclaimer, so my mind is all fuddled up. So I'll try and remember the question, Arnie. I'll come back to it. But the idea very much is third culture kids have an immense appreciation for different lived experiences because they've gone through it themselves. They understand the value of different perspectives, ways of looking at a problem from different vantage points, and the
Mhm.
ability to relate to people, the ability to communicate in different ways to the other party in order to elicit the kind of reaction and response you want. I think these are things that third culture kids have had to do just to be resilient and to survive. You've had to
Right.
make new friends each time. You've had to create your own space each time. So, these are all the skills that university does not teach you, that post-secondary
Mhm.
institutions don't teach you. These are things that seep deep into your way of being because you've lived in all these different places and have this life experience. So I'm not here to judge anyone, but I think third culture kids, especially in an increasingly globalized world where borders are meaningless, I think if you start looking at the leadership ranks in Canada or even the world in the next decade, you'll see that at the top, mostly, I mean, it's not, there's no 100% of anything. At the top, you're going to find people who've lived in different places or have had different, they've studied in different places or they've
Mhm.
worked in different places. Because that combination is going to be critical to have multilateral thinkers, multidimensional thinkers, and
Right.
multi-sectoral thinkers at the top, ensuring that we are leading Canada and leading the world into the next stage of what is in store for us in the future.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks for that. Interesting. You said that, you don't realize or you're not aware of the 80 to 90 pop culture references. So as I was telling you ahead of the call, I was born here, but I grew up listening to Tamil movies and watching Tamil movies, listening to Tamil songs. So, other than like maybe the Spice Girls, I don't really know what people are talking about either. But that kind of leads me to the next point is what can the young generation, I guess, now, the Tamil community now, the Gen Zs, the millennials, what can they get from having this Tamil community that's very united and ready? And, we'll speak to the organizations that you were part of or co-founded after, but what can they really take from this kind of community that we've put together so far?
You know, as a young uncle, I appreciate these moments of giving advice to Gen Zs and millennials. Uh, no, I think, my answer to the last one is
Yes.
it leads into this one. As Tamils, I think we have an incredible opportunity that has been given to us as our birthright to become these third culture kids and to be
Mhm.
part of a global just nation, that is the Tamil nation, right? that, I mean, this is a blessing. As I was saying before the call, this is a blessing. Sometimes it may feel like a curse. You can't ever do something without three other Tamils finding out about it. But that's okay.
Yeah.
That's a small price to pay for ultimately this brotherhood, this sisterhood that we are blessed to have, which transcends nationalities. It transcends citizenships. It transcends borders. And if you were even born in Canada, the fact that you had access to this wider repertoire of knowledge and cultural insights because of your Tamilness immediately sets you apart from, say, the rest of your immediate surroundings, maybe, as somebody who has a different perspective, has a different understanding of the world, has a different vantage point, which you can then utilize for how you go about your professional life, your personal life, your social life, your leadership, and so on. And as Tamils, like, we are what, 180 million, I forget the exact number, strong in almost all the countries. So we are inherently third culture kids, and you can go, and this has been my experience. One of the things I did in 2014, RNA, I backpacked to like 30 countries in 2014. In that entire year. I love to travel, by the way. It's not already part of the third culture kid thing, I think.
Yeah.
And in every single place I went, most of them, not every single, most of them, including like China, I went to that one Tamil restaurant or one Tamil place, one Tamil historical thing, and I went there and understood. So I found, for example, in Vietnam, in Ho Chi Minh City of all places, a Murugan temple that was built in the late 1800s, and I climbed up to the terrace where the Gopuram is, and there's a photo I took of Murugan. This is just a lot. I'm an uncle, so I can go off on tangents. A young uncle. There's a statue of Murugan, and behind that is the old communist flag.
Oh,
And
wow.
I thought that was a great shot. And the reason I'm saying is Tamilness continues to survive. It is global, it spreads. And especially as Canadian Tamils, all of us on the call, we had a unique vantage point because Canada is already seen as a great destination. Canada is already seen as one of the best exemplars of like what the world is going to be like and act like and value like. And so we have both that thing and we have the Tamil thing. It is a very powerful combination. So my only advice to Gen Z and millennials, to come back to your question, is don't lose out on this opportunity. Travel, 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 open yourself up to new experiences. You can always come back and find value in your professional life. But if you have the opportunity to travel, and if you have the opportunity, get involved in the community. This community, with all of no community does, every community has its problems, but what you take from it at the end of the day is much more. It lasts your lifetime, and when you realize halfway through, it is not even your lifetime that you're really thinking about. It is your lifetime of your kids and your grandkids that you start thinking about as you get into this work more and more. So my only advice is get involved. If you can even get involved abroad, get involved in Canada, be a part of the community, build this community, because this community has survived all kinds of things. And I don't just mean the Ulam Tamil community. I mean the global Tamil community has survived a lot. We have a lot more to do. So get involved, travel, and really come into understanding your Tamilness and help build it for what that's going to look like in the future.
Awesome. Thank you. That kind of brings me to the next question, which has to do with involvement. So you have been critical in founding some of these Tamil organizations. You and I were acquainted through Tamils in Finance, for example. There's Tamils in Public Service. So what kind of led you to create these groups? What was your motivation behind it? And what were you trying to seek from it? If you can speak towards that.
So I think, because I moved around a lot, and especially in Oman, where I grew up, I studied Tamil. I actually went to a Sri Lankan school. Every expat community in Oman had their own school, so there's a Sri Lankan school. So I grew up mostly with, in my formative years, like from grades 5 to like 10 or 11, I grew up with a lot of like Sinhalese and Muslims and burghers and not really Tamils. I think I was like one of the few Tamils in the school.
Mm.
So I had this weird experience of like being Sri Lankan at school and then in at home, like speaking Tamil, Saivam,
Right.
Samayam, Tamil history, Tamil literature. Both my parents were educated. My mom was a lawyer, my dad was an accountant, so they knew their thing. So it was this weird dichotomy. And then when I went to Canada, I was excited because I knew there was a much larger Tamil community and I wanted to engage because I didn't really have that kind of unfiltered deep dive into like Tamilness, right? So almost immediately, I think I came to Canada in 97, and in 99, I joined Cantide, which I call the cultural lab of the Tamil community leadership, because I think a lot of wonderful people came out of Cantide, including politicians and broadcasters and business leaders and lawyers and so on. So I was part of Cantide. I went into U of T, became the president of the TSA at Scarborough campus, and all of these things. And so the motivation was always the sense of wanting to belong and wanting to be a part of my Tamil family and what have you. And that was my motivation. And as you went through that, you also, I also started having ideas in terms of understanding that there is a difference between organizing around cultural affinity,
Mhm.
and there is a way in which you can take that cultural affinity and create potentially tangible assets and values out of that. Not in a business sense, but I think in, I guess, what Gen Z and millennials will call now as clout, right?
You're right.
because that's what it is, right? So when this came about, and I was in the public service at the time, the Ontario government, I've been very blessed, I think, especially in TIPS. I always tell of all most of the organizations I've found, TIPS is one of my favorites because in many ways, despite the pain, and Roshani, I'm sure will appreciate this, it has survived and it has grown and it has continued to live up to its potential and its original founding vision and mission, right? So founded TIPS, and the idea was about no, Roshani, I actually say that to everyone. The idea behind TIPS was to organize all Tamil elected officials as well as Tamil civil servants across all orders of government under one umbrella around one table. And we've managed to do that. So you have a network in Canada that has all Tamil public servants on the administrative political divide or interface under one network called the Tamil Public Service Network. And when you do that, it is no longer about individuals sitting in this large sector alone and wondering if there are others like them. You immediately have a home, you have a sense of belonging, you have a common purpose, you have a unified approach to advocacy, to doing what you want to do in the public service or even outside of the public service. One of the best things about TIPS is the fact that it's not just organizing for people in the public service, but it's also about then seeing how can you bring that value and create more energy in the community. Because this overall is not about sector, it's about sector capacity, but it's about community capacity. So TIPS was a great model. And then I said, okay, so public policy is done. By the way, this was a plan that I had a few years ago, because I always thought policy, finance, and business needs to sit together, because that's when things move. We're not there yet, and I'll get into that. So public policy, that table was set. And the next thing was business. So we organized a table, I co-founded a table called the Tamil Entrepreneurs Organization. This one, not a lot of people know because it's an invite only, it's private. And this is a bit different from other similar organizations that exist in the community because we went after mostly tech founders, mostly people who are Tamil, but are not even in the community because they've had the exits and their IPOs listed in NYSE and TSX, but nobody even knew that it was run by Tamils behind the scenes. So we went after those people and we told them, look, you can't just sit here. You're not a lone wolf. You have a community responsibility to not just do well, but help spark even more entrepreneurship and inspire even more entrepreneurs in the community. So the Tamil Entrepreneurs Organization came into being, and you have, and people sitting around that table are either they're running unicorns or they're about to run unicorn companies, right? So very strong people. So government was set, business was set, missing piece was capital. Tamils in finance. Tamils in finance, once again, I remember this clearly. It was a lunch meeting between me, Langawana, Roy, and another gentleman called Bahi. And that's where we hatched the pod. Bahi's been with me on many of these things. He's been a friend for many years now. And we hatched a plot to create the thing called Tamils in finance. And, it has become so much more than what we thought. And I'm very grateful to those gentlemen for seeing the vision and helping come together and making it a reality.
Awesome.
The other thing that I need to say is all of these things are happening with the understanding that this is about Tamilness and the Tamil community. For example, the reason even why Tamils in Finance came about is because we were thinking about creating, the original idea was to create a fundraiser for the Harvard Tamil Chair. That was like the founding reason for why we wanted to bring, and we felt like, folks on Bay Street might have a little bit of a check to cut. So let's just get some people, and that's how the idea started, but then it became much more than that. So the whole thing that I'm saying is all of these associations, and then there's comdu.it and my work with Tamil Rights Group and all of these things, they're all, the best way to summarize is, I think, they're all ways of organizing around sectors.
Right.
But ultimately, all of these need to come into play. That is the part that is a challenge right now, but that's okay because these things have to mature themselves individually first. But when public policy intersects with business, gets ideas from finance, that becomes powerful. Then when those three things consolidate, and then we think politically about what is going on back home in Ulam, and what can we do as Canadians to move around things back home and in the global Tamil world, that becomes Tamil Rights Group. How do we then get to those political outcomes in order to elicit sustainable development outcomes? That becomes comdu.it. So there is this evil plan. No, there is a method to the madness, but this is not a 1 week, 2 week thing. This is my mother, who I lost a few years ago, said, I've given up on you. Like, you care more about outside of the house than inside the house. And she might be true. I kind of hear this from my wife now. But this is a lifetime thing. It's not something that's going to get done in a year or 2 years. I'm resigned to the fact that I'm going to be now a young uncle and then an old uncle still yapping about this stuff and trying to convince people that there is this big, massive, beautiful opportunity and beautiful world that's possible for us as Tamils, and we all need to come together in order to achieve that. I'll be yapping about that 30 years, 40 years on my deathbed, probably.
We'll get to the questions at the end, but I think since I'm mindful of time, I'll wrap up with this question. But first of all, thanks for sharing that, because you kind of went into one of my other questions, which was what can we do better as a Tamil community to further enhance our footprint? But you kind of went into that, and I just want to know, who are some Tamil people in the global community that you think are doing some good work in the community, making a good reputation for us? Who are some people that Kumaran thinks is doing a good job?
No, and that's a hard one. I mean, there are so many good people doing, I think, great work. That's the obvious answer.
The diplomatic answer.
Yeah, that's the diplomatic answer. But I think there's always been like amazing, I think, Tamil leaders, right? Like if you take say Singapore, the early formulation of Singapore as they cleaved off from Malaysia, that cleavage happened because of like Tamils who then became the early the initial presidents and prime ministers of Singapore, the presidents of Singapore, right? Like I think it was Mr. S. Rajaratnam, like the great political leadership there. There is Tan Sri Ananda Krishnan, who runs Petronas in Malaysia and is still the largest shareholder in Petronas Malaysia. Another great example of business leaders. Like Singapore Airlines was set up by like the Tamil gentleman, I forget his name, I think it's JP Chennai. Name's not, it's escaping me right now. So there's been business leaders like that. There's been political leaders like that. SJB Chilanayagam, who fought so much for Tamil Ulam and Ulam Tamil's rights in Sri Lanka, was a great leader. I have this tendency, maybe because I was born in the 80s, where I always have an appreciation sometimes for people who are not alive, because I always think people who are alive, I'm like, that's good, but there could be more. But no, but that's not that's not charitable, I think. So I actually think what Sundar Pichai is doing at Google, what Indra Nui has managed to achieve as a mother, as a woman of color at Pepsi. There is uh, yeah, there are. I'm drawing a blank now, but I think
Oh,
there are so
you
many.
got so many
There's sorry,
examples.
it's coming to me now. It's like I think there is Dhananjay Sri Skandaraja who runs Oxfam in the not-for-profit sector. Politically, you have a few strong cabinet ministers, I think, in like Anita Anand, who's a cabinet,
Right.
who's the Minister of Defense, like of Defense Canada. Like that's insane, I think, and all kudos to her. And I think at least now, I think, I don't know what she did before, but I think now, certainly, I think affiliates herself or has that affinity towards her Tamil identity. So I think there's tremendous people. I think for me, I think inspiration comes from those people, certainly, yes, but it's almost like the point that I wanted to make with all of this is I think we sometimes have this tendency to gravitate towards charismatic leadership, that
Right.
we find that one person and say, Dan Taliban, like, we'll just do. I think leadership is all around us. It is as much as there is a Sundar Pichai or a S. Rajaratnam or a Indra Nui that inspires us. There are so many people around me now doing their thing in a small way that inspires them, right? That inspires me. Like what Shiv is doing with Tamil culture. I'm not just doing this to thank Shiv for the opportunity, but what Shiv has done with Tamil culture is, I think, incredible. Like she's been one, and Shiv is, as usual, not on camera, doesn't have a name on it, has the TC logo, classic Shiv. I've known Shiv for a very long time. She has achieved, I think, something tremendous. Where else would you find a global English language platform for the Tamil world that has run successfully for over a decade, making money, building connections, and creating clout in a rapid fashion? And there
Right.
is this one woman heading it all up that nobody knows about. Of all these names, I think Shiv would be right up there with them.
I love
And
that.
and I really hope there's more, and I know that she's going to take TC to even bigger places.
Awesome. I love it. I love how you kind of rounded it all up and ended up at Pole Culture and Shiv. But hey, thank you so much, Kumaran, for joining us today. I know you're sick. I know it's really early in the morning, but we really do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Arani. Really nice to meet you.